bit congested from the Reagan tollway to the Eisenhower. The other tollways are fine. Hayden's looks good. Kennedy inbound delays start at Irving Park. 47 minutes, O'Hare to downtown. 37 from Montrose, 34 in the Express. Outbound 28 minutes downtown to O'Hare. On Eisenhower, 50 minutes, 390 to downtown. 28 from Mannheim. Outbound 30 minutes to 390. Stevenson, 44 minutes, 355 to the drive. Outbound 35. Ryan, 30 minutes, 95th to downtown. The exit to 31st is closed after a utility fire. Traffic's pretty light elsewhere, but it is windy. I'm Jim Telemonte. On AM 560, The Answer.
Another 64-mile-an-hour wind gust at O'Hare registered. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Winds are very strong. Cloudy skies, 43 today. 42 degrees officially at O'Hare. Your next news update is at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by the Alpha Wealth Group, bringing the trilogy of estate, tax, and investment planning together. Visit alphawealthgroup.com for a free report.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning, Chicago Tribune columnist John Cass and President Trump ringing in the Thanksgiving holiday with the traditional presidential pardon for a turkey. The two competitors, bread and butter, and Trump took the occasion of that ceremony to use the turkeys to squawk about Schiff.
Thankfully, bread and butter have been specially raised by the Jacksons to remain calm under any condition, which will be very important because they've already received subpoenas to appear in Adam Schiff's basement on Thursday. It's true. Hundreds of people have. It seems the Democrats are accusing me of being too soft on turkey. But bread and butter, I should note that unlike previous witnesses, you and I have actually met. It's very unusual.
I'm glad he went that way and not with some sort of Erdogan riff.
I was just worried about. I was so worried about that.
For more on the topic of Thanksgiving, though, separating fact from fiction, we go to McAllister College. That's a small liberal arts college in St. Paul, Minnesota. Campus reform went up there to ask the students a simple question. Should Thanksgiving be celebrated?
Ooh, leaning towards no. I feel like with, the historical context and, kind of the really awful oppression of, indigenous people, like the holiday is really praised by, I think, people more on the conservative side of things to uphold that sort of tradition.
The original, the celebrating a feast really isn't because of the notions of what the actual holiday was.
Well, I mean, the entire thing is sort of based off of indigenous peoples and the murder of indigenous peoples in history.
Not really, but what do Americans do except for celebrate unethical holidays?
What other holidays are unethical?
Columbus Day. I mean, Christmas break, it should be labeled as winter break in general, but most schools are celebrating as Christmas break.
Sure. Do you celebrate these holidays?
More or less.
Is it okay to celebrate Thanksgiving?
Intellectual consistency.
No.
No, I've very
Yeah, it's probably not as bad as Christmas or Easter, but
the resurrection of Christ is terrible.
So you think Christmas and Easter are worse than Thanksgiving?
Yeah, definitely. I don't celebrate Christmas and Easter.
Sure.
That shit sucks. I'm pretty anti-religious. So
Really?
I think that they're just
why are you at a religious school then? There's a church right over there.
It's true. It's true. That's a good point.
Got me on that one. Yeah, also your school was founded by a Civil War chaplain, but we digress. For more on the topic, the kids have it right. The kids, for a couple of generations now, who've been told by the elites, particularly in academia, that Thanksgiving is a day of mourning. It's really just a holiday conservatives celebrate, but it shouldn't be celebrated by the woke, right? Melanie Kirkpatrick is a former Wall Street Journal opinion editor. She's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and she's the author of Thanksgiving, the Holiday at the Heart of the American Experience, Melanie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome, and happy Thanksgiving, a holiday I proudly celebrate.
Uh-oh.
And I will tell you that the views that were expressed by these McAllister students just show that they are ignorant of the history of the holiday and probably of a whole lot more having to do with American history. But, the idea that Thanksgiving is a holiday that originated with the genocide of the Native Americans is an idea that has crept down to elementary school and certainly high school. So I'm not surprised that you have some college kids who are expressing this. And Howard Zinn is partly responsible for this, I might say.
People's history of the United States.
History of the United States.
Yeah.
But, one of the things I did in my book was address this issue by asking Native Americans what they thought of Thanksgiving. Interestingly, it was hard to find Native American leaders who thought that Thanksgiving shouldn't be celebrated and who didn't celebrate Thanksgiving. The leader of one organization expressed it beautifully to me. She said that on Thanksgiving, as a Native American, she remembers her ancestors and thinks about the tragedies of their deaths. At the same time, she said, "I am an American." That was a quote. She celebrated the holiday as an American and for all that it stood for. So, it's complicated, but when it comes to Thanksgiving, people make it more complicated than it is. The original Thanksgiving, the one that we celebrate today, the 500. This is tomorrow. Pardon me. It will be the 598th. No, I'm sorry. I'm doing my math wrong. It's the 398th
1621, right?
Yeah, 1621, right. You're better at arithmetic than I am. And,
school.
That first Thanksgiving was a time when the English settlers and the Native Americans came together in a peaceful, companionable way. They were wary of one another, for sure. And one of the eyewitness reports by a pilgrim describes how during the 3-day celebration, the pilgrims gave a demonstration of their arms, of their weapons. And you have to wonder why they would do that, and it probably was to alert the Indians to the fact that they had these weapons, which were powerful. At the same time, the Native Americans came with 90 braves, and that was twice the number of pilgrims who were at the celebration. And more than half of them, were children and women. So, it was a time when these two people came together and gave thanks. And a few years later, some years later, war erupted, and things were not as happy as they were at that moment in time. But for that moment, I like to think that companionable holiday between two different people points the way to the multicultural people American became.
Well, Pilgrim leader William Bradford referred to Squanto, one of the settlers they encountered, whose descendants had been wiped out by smallpox, as, quote, a special instrument sent of God for their good. So that was the initial interaction between Bradford and Squanto, one of the inhabitants where they landed as they were trying to settle that land.
Exactly. The Native Americans are portrayed in Bradford's book of Plymouth Plantation, his journal of the years in Plymouth, as heroic figures, as people who were extraordinarily helpful and kind to the English settlers.
And it also turns out, much like Voltaire said of the Holy Roman Empire, that it was neither holy nor Roman, the Pilgrims, as persecuted and as oppressors, they were neither. Particularly the idea of the Pilgrims fleeing religious persecution in Holland
And in point of fact, as I understand it, reading about it, it was really them fleeing the Dutch materialistic culture that they didn't want to corrupt their children.
That was part of it. Their children were learning Dutch and were becoming Dutchified, if that's a word. And so, but they were also, of course, fleeing the oppression that they faced in England and had gone to Holland for. And they couldn't go back to England, so they came to this continent. One of the things I when I wrote my book, I did was I went to Newcomers High School in Queens, New York. Queens, a borough of New York City, is has the densest population of immigrants in America, and there is a high school there for kids who have newly arrived. And in November, a couple years ago, I went there and interviewed these newcomers who were about to celebrate their first Thanksgiving. And I asked them about the meaning of Thanksgiving. And I was profoundly touched by what they told me. One boy raised his hand and told me he was from Tibet, a country that hasn't existed since China invaded it in 1950. And he said his family came to America so that they could practice their religion, the Buddhism of the Dalai Lama, so they could practice it freely. And then he said, I am like the pilgrims. He said, that's why we came. And a girl spoke up and said she was a Copt from Egypt. Copts are an ancient form of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And she said that her family, too, came here seeking religious freedom. Then another kid spoke up and talked about, I think he was from Haiti, maybe, someplace, one of the Caribbean islands, and said that the family came seeking better lives for themselves. And it's these young immigrants had a really, I thought, deeper sense of the true meaning of the holiday, unlike many American-born kids.
I wanted to get to, there's so much agitprop around this holiday and the founding of our country and the way Native Americans were treated. There's a book by David Silverman, who's a history professor at George Washington University, where history is not required to be a history major. It's just sort of interesting. But in addition to that, the book is This Land is Their Land, and it essentially argues for the position of Thanksgiving as properly a national day of mourning, arguing that white America's triumphs have been borne on Native people's backs. How do you respond to that claim?
Well, it's what happened to the Native Americans is indeed a tragedy, and it's but war, and it was a war, is tragic. Am I glad the English settlers won? Yes, I am. And I think that the country that has been founded on many of the principles that they brought with them and has become the greatest nation in the world. So, does anybody want to reverse that outcome? Even Professor Silberman? I doubt it.
She is Melanie Kirkpatrick, former Wall Street Journal opinion editor, now senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and author of the book, Thanksgiving, the Holiday at the Heart of the American Experience. Melanie, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck with the book. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. She joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I am definitely enjoying and committed to the fruits and vegetable capsules. The secret for this is there is no other place, no other source for getting all of those nutrients from simple fruits and vegetables. It's easy to take. I feel stronger and better, more energy, more completeness, less pain a little bit here and there, and just better. It's a very special product. There's nothing else on the market near it, and I'm just really glad that I have it.
Experience the Balance of Nature difference for yourself. From now until the end of the week, Balance of Nature is offering 35% off and free shipping on your first preferred order of Balance of Nature. This special is ending between now and Black Friday weekend, so don't wait. Call 800-2468-751. That's 800-2468-751. Or go to balanceofnature.com and use discount code CHICAGO.
Hi, it's Amy Jacobson, and I have an exclusive offer for our listeners